Hey, hi everyone, and welcome to this webinar. Thank you very much for joining us today. I'm Elaine Shanks. I'll be your host for this session on AI readiness. I am a client director and part of the team at Demon, where we help our clients use data, technology, and the emerging AI tooling, always with a focus on real world problems, not just chasing hype, of which there's plenty there. I'm joined by the wonderful Paul, Henry, and Ian, our heads of practice at Demon. Before we go into the introductions, a little bit about Demon. Demon are technologists, we're hands-on, people first, and we believe in building capability rather than dependency. Today's webinar is all about helping you understand where your organization is in terms of AI readiness and the practical steps that you can take to move forward. It's not about shiny demos, quick proof of concepts, abstract theory, or imagined numbers. It's about being honest about where you are as an organization and clear about what's next. So in terms of the agenda today, we're going to talk about strategic intent and business readiness as the first stage. We're going to look at your organization and cultural readiness, looking at data foundations, tech infrastructure and skills, and then there'll be the chance. There's a chance throughout to ask any questions that you have. You'll see in the top right of the screen that there's a questions button. And we also have some time at the end for a Q&A. But before we dive into all of that, I'm going to ask the speakers to briefly introduce themselves. And I think I'll ask Henry to kick us off.
Good afternoon, everybody. So my name's Henry Ayres. I am the Head of Engineering Centre of Excellence at Demon. I've been with Demon for about 6.5 years. I started as a trusted partner. I've had a career spanning nearly 3 decades in technology, various tech roles, but always enjoying the technology disruptors that come along, cloud and agile, etc., and enjoying the opportunity to discuss the disruptor of AI in the engineering space. Paul?
Cool, thanks, Henry. So look, hi everyone. Thank you for joining today. So as Henry says, I'm Paul Campbell. I've been with Demon probably about 13 years now, so definitely been here a while, seen some things. So in my time at Demon, I've carried out a number of different roles. So started off as a consultant on the ground, working with our customers, hopefully delivering successful outcomes for them. Moved on to heading up our delivery function, and now over the last couple of years, my focus has definitely been our cloud centre of excellence. Now, a lot of what we do in this space is helping our customers with their kind of modern infrastructure journeys, looking at things like public, private, hybrid cloud solutions, kind of overlaid with our capabilities around DevOps and platform engineering, and helping support those modernization journeys. So look, really excited about today's talk. Really looking forward to getting into it a little bit, and I'll just hand over to Ian to give a bit of an intro.
Thank you very much, Paul. Appreciate it. Hi, I'm Ian Ray. I'm the head of data and AI for Demon Solutions. I've been with Demon for the past 6 years, so feel like the newbie, just under Henry. I've been the head of data and AI for the past 3 years. So the team really work across a multitude of sectors and industries. We work with companies from startup all the way up to enterprise. And specifically, the changes that we've seen in the AI space is we work anywhere from now architectural design all the way through to embedding sort of bespoke LLMs. So we really work closely as well with the latest and greatest cloud providers to make sure that we're delivering the latest tech for both ourselves and for our clients as well. Back to you, Elaine.
Amazing. Thank you all. Let's get into it. So the first topic, we're going to talk about strategic intent and business readiness. Paul, let's start with you. Where do you see AI giving businesses the biggest advantage in their value chains?
Wow, what a really good starting point, Elaine. I think that this is great because I think understanding where AI really delivers value helps us define why we need to be ready and what we need to prepare for. So look, if we take a little bit of a step back from the question, I think there are some kind of core themes that I see a lot of businesses kind of talking about, the areas that they know they've got some challenges, areas that they want to try and improve and really bring that value to their business. And I think just going through these, I mean, look, there are probably others, but these are the ones that I see quite a lot of conversation around. And first one being really around inefficiency and waste within their business, right? Wanting to really look at optimizing their resource, get the most out of things, but really looking at how they reduce those kind of operational overheads and ultimately cost within their organization to help them. And I think one that's really tightly coupled to that is things like repetitive work, places where there's room for kind of human error potentially in things, and looking at how they can take some of these tasks that they know what the outcomes are going to be. They're quite easy to kind of achieve, but looking at how you really put automation in there, trying to reduce the amount of errors that happen. Humans aren't perfect, right? They get, things happen, you make mistakes. And I think if we can use kind of AI to help reduce the amount of errors that we have, I think actually freeing up the humans to deliver the kind of high value work and actually really looking at how they can boost productivity. A couple of other areas that I think that businesses are challenged with is things like data overload, for example. So, lots of businesses have huge amounts of data, some of it's structured, some of it's unstructured, categorized, uncategorized. And really what that leads to is a lot of lack of insight, right? And that's what businesses want to do. They want to get to a point where they can have real-time actionable intelligence, that they can really look to start to make decisions faster, but really be a lot more informed about those decisions that they're making. And I know for a fact this would be one that really strikes a chord with Henry, and there will be some stuff around this stuff, but businesses, there is this perception that maybe there's slow innovation within their business, and what they really want to do is increase that, right? They want to look at how they can take an idea and massively reduce that time it takes to get that to market. And I think that really focuses around the engineering practices that you use around it. And I think there is this big hope that AI will really look to kind of bridge that gap a little bit, right? And I think just some examples of internally how we're using AI to kind of think about how we can help our customers and make things easier for them is, from an infrastructure point of view for me, really looking at some of the services that we provide for our customers. And like just a few that I can a couple that I'll kind of talk about is, we do a huge amount of cost optimization for our customers, right? Really looking at how, for example, they, use their cloud spend and how they can drive costs down. We've had a lot of success over the years of doing this, with a lot of customers being like, over £1 million in savings per year as a result of a lot of the good work that we've done. But that doesn't come without a lot of kind of manual work to kind of work yourself through the logging and things like that. And I think one of the focuses that we're putting in here is we're looking at how we can build an AI cost optimization service to provide the right recommendations and make that a lot easier. Another big space that we work with in our practice is well-architected reviews. So going in, doing a review for a customer, helping them find opportunities for improvements. And really what we're looking at the moment is, how do we reduce that window down? How do we reduce the amount of friction, that it takes up with the customer's time and things like that, to look at how we can just really, for us, look at how we can move away from the heavy lifting, use AI to really speed up that process, but ultimately make it, like I say, quicker, better, easier for our customers and for us to deliver that for us as well. So look, I think for me, that's where I see the value is, finding the right use cases, but fixing some of those kind of thematic challenges that we're definitely seeing in the industry at the moment.
Really helpful, thank you. Ian, what's your point of view on that?
Yeah, I think I come at it from a slightly different angle than Paul, just because I've got my data and AI hat on. I think for me, one of the biggest areas of advantage I really see sits between that area of data and the call to action. So essentially that decision layer that sits in the middle. So this would include things like pricing optimization. So we've seen this recently with one of the retailers that we worked with, that we identified inconsistent sale prices in different regions across their estate. And actually what it done is, by even understanding that, helped where they could move their margins slightly and provided a bit more consistency. Then we put a wrapper around it and created a bit more of a consistent approach so that it could be automated and, like I say, a bit more consistent for the consumer, a bit more consistent for the client as well, and actually increase profitability. Another angle to it is customer support and triage. I'm sure we all get super frustrated with, sitting on the phone waiting for 20 minutes for calls to be answered, to try and get through to someone with a problem. I know I've experienced it recently as well. And wouldn't it be amazing if we could preempt a customer's problem based on their previous behaviours or their region or the specific area that they're living in. So using all of the data that we have, it's not about removing the decision making process in between, but it's, as Paul said, speeding up that process. I also worked with a fraud detection provider a few months ago and was fascinated with the work that they were doing and how we helped them. And what they'd done initially was to start tracking fraudulent activity by the customer's account, but then they start building out sort of nodes from that information. So they would look at a customer account, see what IP addresses it's attached to, what other accounts are related to it, and they start building up this sort of node network of all fraudulent activity. They can track it by IP address, MAC address, their own unique ID. But I mean, that was great in itself because you start building up this profile of a customer and related interactions with those kind of areas and how it's interacted with. But the best thing for me was, you could create a deny list and you can send it to another client, and all of that information could be spread across the board. And you're not playing catch up with fraud, you're actually getting ahead of it. So if you've got an early insight into what devices are being used, you can start to sort of block that activity for other providers of different services. So really nice way to sort of knit the network together. And I think lastly for me, just from a customer experience perspective via personalization, we've all seen loyalty offers. I'm sure loads of people have used them at the moment, but a really nice way to enhance the customer's experience, to really tailor that, to shape it to their shopping behavior, but also, to make sure that the retailer's getting what they want as well. There's certain products that they want to push that week, and it's at a benefit of the end consumer as well. So the point really is that organizations can use AI to reduce or compress that feedback loop, essentially reducing the time between the data arriving, it being generated, and then the action being taken. So for me, as I said, it's not about replacing the humans, it's about speeding up that decision-making process. Paul's already alluded to it. We've also seen a significant shift in how businesses use real-time data streaming. That really gives people an advantage at the moment. Again, it's that increasing of the flow of speed to get to that end action point as quickly as possible. Just lastly, one of the areas I've also seen AI work really well is when it's not just standalone initiative, but it's really woven through the fabric of the business. So engineering, operations, customer experience, compliance, all those people combined is really where the value starts to be seen and starts to materialize. And I think the more departments that you add to it, the more compounding value that you see as well.
That's really interesting. Society is definitely becoming more and more impatient, and I guess AI is what's the way that it keeps up. And then finally, Henry.
Thanks. Wow, quite a challenge to add anything meaningful after two industry leaders and leaders in our business with so much insight. But I mean, I come from a slightly different direction on this. I come from what it means in your engineering space, and for some of the things we do for our retail customers. So it seems to me that it was just only a few short years ago when AI was all around data. I mean, I can remember doing things back in 2006 in e-learning using data for AI purposes. There's some neat NLP products that could help you with requirements gathering, maybe. But it was really about large sets of data and using those sets of data for machine learning type operations. But recently, of course, we all know about the large language models that have appeared, the LLMs, ChatGPT, really disrupting the marketplace. And so the focus has really shifted from the lens of data into how you can use that type of AI disruptor to improve your business. With the data in our retail customers, there's so much opportunity for doubling down on the customer experience and making sticky customers. So, shorten the supply chain life cycle, customer decision hierarchy, shelf edge labeling, online order picking. All of these things bring efficiencies, and our retail customers are very keen on grabbing that opportunity to keep their client, keep their customer coming back. So if their favorite type of jam is not on the shelf, what's the next favorite that might take their interest, or what can we offer them online to take their interest? A lot of that is already in play, is already being done, but now there's across the board more opportunities to really do a across the board kind of operation to bring all of that AI opportunity in. And it does lead to a few issues with companies, throw a lot of money at 7 different proof of concepts and none of them work. In fact, just recently on the partner summit, AWS partner summit, AI, generative AI roundtable, the feeling was it was about 1 in 10 proof of concepts went forward. When we switch it round and look from where my part of the organization is in engineering, the big opportunity is reduce your software development lifecycle time. One really strong area that we're looking at is improving requirements gathering. This is always a problem with our clients because they're not necessarily sophisticated enough to do the type of requirements gathering. They're not software engineers as such. They might have an engineering or a part of their organization, but just keeping going with the day-to-day of running the business is quite difficult. So we're looking deeply at how we can improve requirements gathering, verifying requirements, writing a test using AI from that requirements to speed up large parts of the process. So when it comes to actually delivering the software, you then have your IDE that is AI augmented to help you, and that becomes the easy part of the operation. I think one of the things that we talked about between us recently is what businesses are actually doing. Businesses aren't standing still because they don't care about innovation. They're flat out just to keep running. But the reality is, while they're holding the fort, the competitors are delving into AI. They're trying out, experimenting, embedding across their value chain. Then the gap widens. And that's really what I'm talking about with AI engineering readiness. If you've already got quality engineering practices in place and the correct behaviors to do good engineering, then you're ideally situated to start taking advantage of some of these opportunities. If you haven't, you're unlikely to gain anything by throwing AI at it. You'll just end up in a bit more of a mess. So you might, but it's unlikely. Elaine.
Super interesting. I think nobody doubts the use cases around AI, and it's being selective about where that's going to get the biggest bang for your buck. Thank you very much. So the next question after that is on organisation and cultural readiness. Like, so much of what we're seeing in the market on AI and machine learning can feel a little bit black box. It presents information, data, insights. It's almost like insights on steroids. These insights can drive millions, have the potential to drive millions of pounds in business revenue, different interventions, investments at a scale. But that's, insights that feel black box, that can feel enormously risky. So when you aren't seeing where it comes from, because the technology shortcuts the usual process of developing the insights, particularly for a C-suite, whether it's a CIO, a chief revenue officer, or anybody that has an investment budget and is held to account for it, how would you recommend building trust in the recommendations inside the business when it comes from AI tooling? Tough question, I'm afraid. So Ian, I think I'd like to start with your answer, please.
Yeah, for sure. No, it is a great question. And I think that this is something that comes up a lot, especially when we're speaking with our clients as well. I think, the bare bones of it is, if people don't trust the outputs of AI, then they won't act on it, or they'll ignore it. They'll probably challenge it, or even more dangerously, they'll probably use it without understanding the risks involved. So, that definitely isn't our approach. So the way that we build trust isn't about expecting everyone, to understand algorithms and knowing how every model works. It's really focusing on how the system behaves and what outcomes it truly sort of delivers. We need to make sure that it behaves sort of fairly, transparently. And I guess what people want to know is, the results that they see today will hold true tomorrow. And actually, if anything does change, they'll be made aware of it. So some of the things that we actually focus on is really clearly defining the purpose of AI, so we know what it's doing and why it's doing it, making sure that we can explain why the system is servicing the recommendations it is. And I would also say a massive advocate of this as well is just to make sure that we're including a human in the loop to start with. So we're embedded in the feedback process. We can learn to challenge it, and then we can adjust the outputs as the AI learns as well. Governance and oversight is super important, making sure that we've got the right controls, monitoring and audibility in place as well. And I think, like I say, trust isn't built just through a clever model. It's built through good design, good governance, and that continuous interaction between the human, and the system as well. So, and I think, again, I said this earlier as well, I think it's fair to say that most implementations are the ones where users feel involved in the process. That is definitely key. And most importantly, in control of it.
Cool. So look, I think Ian, I just really want to touch on a couple of the points that you've just made actually, and I think look, again, I agree completely. This is a brilliant question, and I think something that in order for us all to be ready for AI, right, in the very early stages, there is this importance of building trust with the solutions that you're building, right? And like, I don't know if everybody knows, AI doesn't always get it right, right? It's something that is still something that we're trying to catch up with. It's evident, right? Like, I think AI is a bit like what my wife tells me, I'm never right, basically. So, but look, I think part of building trust in the solutions that you build, I think Ian really made a really good point, is there does still need to be humans in the loop of what you're doing, right? And I think there's a couple of different situations where you may have trust in AI, or you may want to have someone more involved. And I think for low risk situations that aren't going to cause some kind of significant impact to your business, like causing some kind of financial loss, right? Nobody wants that. I mean, in more drastic cases, putting someone's life in danger, you put risking someone's safety, but ultimately like reputational damage for a business, right? And I think in these low risk situations, there's certain examples where you're fine with it, right? So if we take call routing, right? You call customer services, you say some keywords to trigger what department you're going to be getting sent to. If AI sends you to the wrong department, the worst you're going to get is a bit of frustration, right? So you're kind of comfortable with those types of things that are repeatable and quite simple to allow AI to just take control. But in more higher stake type situations, I think that's where you still want a human to be involved in that decision making process. Like if we take, for example, the financial industry, right? People are applying for a mortgage, for example, and you can use AI to kind of process those applications at speed, try and verify against against all the potential risks that might be out there. You might want it to, you don't want it to blindly approve people through that process or deny them. You want to maybe surface this up to somebody like a human to come in and maybe review that case and understand, are the risks too great? Can we do things just to ensure there's no bias or anything like that? Everything's fair in the process. Now, I think for me in the cloud space, an example of where stuff that we're doing where we've put human in the loop of the process. I mean, if I take the example of, a developer wants to write some code, they want to push it into a Git repo, for example, and then, provision a set of cloud resources to be triggered in a deployment. Where you might want a human in the loop just to kind of build trust in the starting point. And I think this is probably, relevant to kind of software engineering as well. But effectively, you write some code, you want someone to do a code review, right? You might want the machine to do the first pass and do a little review through from standard practices, but you kind of want someone that's got, battle scars and history in engineering to maybe do that final decision before it actually gets merged into the code base. There may be a cost review that you want to do, right? If we're talking about AI systems that you're building, for example, provisioning these types of infrastructure can be quite expensive at times. And I think, maybe there's a checkpoint that you want, right? I just want to verify that this isn't going to cost too much when I deploy this out into production. And I want to make sure that it fits within budgets. Okay. So that's probably another step. But then that final step, right? You've done all that stuff, right? You've written your code, it's passed its review, it's been merged, you've had the decision that, it's not going to cost too much, you're happy for this to go to production. But you probably, before you hit the big red button, you probably want a human to kind of just verify it's not going to cause any impact to the actual system that you're deploying to, right? You don't want to create an unintended outage. You don't want to create a problem during a busy peak period. So I just think it's just be conscious that, you can build trust in these systems. It does take a bit of time, and there will be times where you want just a human just to verify that decision. And as that trust builds up over time, you're then more confident to kind of allow that out into the wild a little bit more, and do things on its own.
Yeah, I mean, hallucination is a real thing, particularly with AI and large language models. I think there was the anecdote that was in the news where the Google AI overview in the search engine was advising users to put glue on their pizza. Clearly nonsense that anyone sensible would realize is not that recommended. But it's something that needs to be maintained over time as well. You build it, you don't just deploy it and forget about it. It's hallucination is just something that it needs to be managed over time. Trust
100%.
takes a lifetime to build and only second to destroy, all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah.
Henry, this cheers all up.
It could be anecdote central here today. Actually, a friend of mine is implementing some call routing software, AI powered, in his insurance company, and he is not putting it in place yet because you can get it to have a conversation about things it really shouldn't. And it will spend time talking to you. It will go back to what it's supposed to be doing, but he's not convinced that it's ready for public approval yet. It will be there, like all these things. I think there's the discussions that we've had in the industry and amongst ourselves. There's kind of two camps of what's going on here, because you've obviously you've got your engineering process, and then you've got your business. So if you were to look at the engineering part of the organization, you're going to have, if you've got good software engineers, they're going to be playing with it. They've probably been at it since ChatGPT first hit the internet, because they're software engineers, they're inquisitive, they want to know. So they're already building their trust with the technology that they're using. So and understanding what is good, what is bad. How far can you push it? A lot of us have been really playing with AI augmented IDEs to understand what we do trust and what we don't trust, and having some great fun vibe coding and watch it destroy a code base or really help you with a code base. And that stuff is fascinating. And I think in Demon itself, some of the biggest AI naysayers are the like really top 10x software engineers. And then you find out they're like, oh, it's making me dumber because I can do this already. But in the background, they're building AI components to help them with their job, like a commit message creator that does it in their style. So it's teasing out that trust, where they're building trust, and then using some of that to do the thing that we've been doing for years, which is the social and psychological engineering of the business. Because every business we go into, the business will know what it wants, and the engineering team will know what it needs to deliver. And often it's the actual meeting of the two, getting that agreement of what you actually need and how far can you actually go and what can you trust. And we've done all of that as well with cloud and agile and all of those, the internet. Remember your first e-commerce site, if you can remember that far back when there was no such thing as an e-commerce site. It was a massive commitment of trust. And AI is no different with bringing this on. What the business wants to know is that they can, is it going to improve ROI? If we put some money against this, is it going to be lost? Is it going to improve our business? Are we going to be able to meet our mission by adopting these sort of new technologies? So the same conversations happen as has happened previously, because there's a lot of noise around AI and how disruptive it can be. At the moment, if you do a proper job of employing it in your company, I just see great strides forward for all of the things the other guys have talked about around economies of scale and efficiencies. So it's got to be good for a business. It's just pitching it correctly and letting people understand where the limits are and how you stop it going beyond those limits and actually becoming something dangerous for your business. I you could talk for days about this stuff. I definitely think it goes back to where cloud became really, really big. That was a really big disruptor for a lot of technology organizations, and it's definitely the same conversations.
Brilliant. I mean, it's certainly what you read about in the press around the impact of this technology, particularly on the workforce. But human in the loop, human insight, human instinct, and creativity will always be needed. AI and machine learning can equip you to make better, faster decisions at an exponential scale. But at the end of the day, businesses do need to remain in command of the direction of their companies. Brilliant, thank you. So the opportunity is clear, and the payback and the ROI, the return on investment, is clear. Let's delve into a little bit about the foundations to get there, data foundations as an example. So, I think it's fairly obvious that the race for advantage through AI is very much on. You can see the build of different large language models, whether that's Grok, Claude, Gemini, and other tooling, and ChatGPT. But actually, on the flip side, in an open letter from the JP Morgan CIO, he warned that when it comes to AI procurement, security vulnerabilities are growing faster than companies can contain them. And Henry, you alluded to that. That highlights a very real concern. The use and deployment of data governance and security is not new in development of technology, but from the AI lens, what do companies need to think about? I think I'll direct that question to Ian.
Excellent. Yeah, it's really relevant at the moment as well. And look, I think I can speak from experience that, as you said, we've seen a massive fast pace of progression with AI, and it's completely raised the bar in data governance and security over the last sort of few months, especially with all of the noise in the media as well. But what I'd say is, it's not just about keeping data safe anymore. It's just making sure that it's fit for purpose as well. So, there's an extra step on that ladder. So yes, keep it safe. Also make sure that it's fit for purpose. So that means that companies need to think beyond compliance checklists really, and start asking deeper questions like, can I actually trust the data and use it for decision making? Do I even know where the data's come from? Can I actually trust its journey? And I think, on that point, and to get the best out of AI, and with my data hat on, I think we need to understand the origins of the data, how it's processed, so we can be confident in the decisions and make sure that they're not outdated, they're not incomplete, and they're not incorrect. It's that accuracy of data that we want to get to. We're a company that experiences it, and we're working on it. But big corporate entities, see a huge problem with the amount of information and duplication that they have on the sites like SharePoint and Confluence. Outdated information happens really quickly, irrelevant information that drops by the wayside. So all of that needs to be sorted through. Luckily enough, we're doing a good job about it. So we just need to make sure that the right controls and access are in place, so we know who's accessing the data, under what conditions, and really for what purpose. You don't want to give free roam to everyone. You really want to understand, or give the data to the right people to edit and make sure that they're really providing the right level of oversight on it. I think implementing role-based access, just leading on for that, defining clear monitoring and ensuring responsible use are really key to governing those AI systems. And I think we've seen that in the introduction of the new ISO standard that was launched back in the end of 2023. I think from a legal and ethical perspective, we need to make sure that we're considering, the laws and regulations like GDPR that will make a massive difference, and already is, especially where dealing with sensitive or customer-specific data. Most importantly, the AI needs to understand where the boundaries are for that system, so we can make sure that we're using it safely and, most importantly, legally as well. So, and I would say that this shouldn't be an afterthought. We shouldn't implement AI and then think about it. This should be defined upfront as part of the initiation, the architectural process of these kinds of systems. I think you're losing if you're trying to implement that after the fact. After you've started implementing AI into your business, there's no reason it can't be defined upfront. Set those parameters so you know exactly where you're going, how it's going to be controlled.
Yeah, and I think that, and I think you've touched on some really good points there, actually. And I think more than anything, I don't think I've got a huge amount more to say than what you've said around a lot of this stuff. But I do think you're right from a governance perspective. It's about having the right roles and responsibilities that sit around the data, right? Someone that's accountable for the decisions that are being made, that has the right oversight on all those solutions that you're kind of delivering. I think, that kind of end-to-end observability across what you're doing, so you can actually track usage and behavior of the system and really understand what it's doing, super important, right? Having those regular audits and feedback loops so that you can actually look and inspect and actually make sure it's doing what you want it to do. And if you need to tweak something, change something, super important for that kind of continuous improvement loop that you need to go through when you're doing this. But I think from a security perspective, like, AI just adds in a whole bunch of new attack vectors that malicious kind of attackers can kind of exploit and take advantage of. But I do think, the importance of security hasn't changed. It's always been there. I think it's just changing with what's happening right now in the market and making sure that you address it. And I think you hit the nail on the head, right? You think about this from the outset of designing a solution, the architecture you build. One of the big pushes that we do with our customers, or anything that we do around a solution we design, is reviewing that against like the well architected pillars that are out there around all of those different dimensions that you need to consider and think about. And I think security is obviously a super strong one that you need to look at and make sure that you're on top of. And I think, with that in mind, thinking about the right types of guardrails that you need to put in place for, allow flexibility of the usage of the system, but also protect yourself from all those kind of outside or even internal attack vectors that might potentially be there for you. But really important. Like I say, I don't think anything significantly changed in the focus that you need to put into governance and security, but it does just open up a whole new world of different things that you need to consider in the long run. So.
And Henry, the idea of strong data governance and security baked in from the beginning, this won't be anything new to you. What's your point of view from AI? You're on mute, Henry. It wouldn't be a webinar without at least one you're on
was
mute.
so excited by the question. I mean, I'm coming after these two again with, saying exactly the same things we all understand. But one, I sound like a stuck record with all the other disruptors that have hit the industry. There was always somebody would fall foul of some type of security issue that would lend to a lot of data being lost, a lot of unhappy people. And so it's the same again. Use the same engineering behaviors and practices that you've always used, because it's the bad actors that are going to try and double down on AI to use it as something to to steal data or steal information. They're still out there, and they're going to be fighting as hard as we are to keep them away from our clients' data. When it comes to our clients, it's the same big fear of any sensible CIO: is our data safe? Are our systems safe? If your security of your apps and public interfaces is shoddy now, it won't be fixed by AI. There's lots of tools, and they're really good, that will help you improve it. We use AI in SDLC because it enables us to spot anything that might be a slight security issue with our code bases. And it makes it, we've still got the human lens on it, but that also is something that helps us learn, because we're learning by that. I know definitely I am. There's certain parts of, I love programming in Go. There's certain things I've learned just recently that could be an issue because of the way you've written that. And it's like, oh, okay, let's change that because it's a simple course to follow. You know, I think one of the things that I keep banging on about is readiness in your software engineering organization, or part of the organization. Daemon has a proposition of engineering maturity assessment, and it's exactly that reason. It's about fixing your engineering process before you actually start getting deeply into throwing AI at it. So, do you have visibility of your current engineering practices? Can you assess your performance? If you're already struggling, then you need to fix this before you really dive headlong into AI.
So, in short, innovation can happen, but it's the usual critical wrapper of strong data governance, good monitoring and alerting, and security baked in. Okay, I'm going to direct this next question to Henry since felt like he's had to go last each time. My view is that despite all this great technology and the advancements in this space, people will always be a business's most important asset. There's been a lot in the press, in particular, about how AI and the new tooling and capabilities available will impact software engineering as a career. So, what investments do companies have to make to ensure that their engineering teams are able to build, maintain, and use AI-enabled systems, and actually business users as well? Is it a whole new workforce? So, Henry,
Gosh,
what would
yeah. If you're a young software engineer just starting your career, really enjoying what you do, don't read LinkedIn too much. Don't read don't read too much on Twitter because I'm pretty sure you're not going to be out of a job by the end of the year. But a lot of people are implying that, and I think that some organisations have deliberately used the AI is going to put software engineers out of a job to sell things to maybe the investors. When you look more deeply into these announcements that companies make, really they're just shedding, doing natural churn of people because they need to reduce their workforce because the world is in a bit of flux and maybe not so much opportunity is out there. Um, I think when you come to my part again, the engineering delivery lens, um, there's obviously specialist tools that you can license. We're all using specialist IDEs now that are AI augmented. There are all sorts of really cool products out there, and actually sifting through them is a bit of a problem in itself. But there's going to be great products that you can license to enhance your practice and to speed up your SDLC. Software engineers are inquisitive. I've said that before. They'll already be in there to trying things out. So in Demon, what we've done is we've just set out a stall to energize that. So when we started talking about goals for our employees at the beginning of this year for our engineers, it's like set a goal around using AI. What's the art of the possible? What can you do? And put some time aside to really double down on understanding that. It's really interesting at how some people then come out of the woodwork and say, well, I've done all this already. And some people is like, I've not tried it. And then 3 days later, it's like, can you stop messaging me? I know how brilliant it is. Okay, so that now just move on. There's other areas that really take some thinking about the use of those tools. How do you cover that in your contracts and in your engagements? If you're building a product for a business, if you're a product led business, how do you cover that off that you're not doing something that is going to be legally problematic with data? It's something that you really need to kind of apply some time looking at. I mean, you can start off with relatively minor investments to get you on your way there. You can end up doing post training of models in your particular industry. There's many opportunities. It's not a whole new workforce. I think the people that we've got are going to be the ones that are bringing this, taking this forward. But they do need a different mindset.
Yeah, and so I think you've made some really great points there. I mean, sorry, I keep patting everyone on the back for their great comments, but no, honestly, I think you've hit some really good points, which is it's not all about the technology, right? There are other considerations, legal, commercial ramifications that you need to deal with as a result of this stuff. But I do think, right, some really good points about the right tools for the job, right? Ensuring that these things are available for our engineers as part of their day-to-day job. And it's something we've really focused on around getting our workforce ready to start really using AI at pace. I do think that, the question about whole new workforce. Completely agree. It's not a new workforce. It's about powering up the one that you've got. Now, I do think there's going to be cases for a sprinkle of, some special SME kind of capability that you want to come in and really elevate the team a little bit and try and drive forward, that have got some experience. But yeah, I mean, it is about, I'm sure with all your businesses, you've got really good teams, really good, really talented people, that this is just about elevating their capabilities with something else that comes along. Now, I think outside of that, the other things that you really need to be ready for when you're thinking about this stuff for your users, as well as the tools, you need to be able to have the infrastructure or the environments for them to be able to use to kind of build these solutions, right? And a lot of these services for AI workloads are generally specialized infrastructure. So it's ensuring that you've got access to, I don't know, the right GPUs or distributed training environments to help support the capabilities that you're really trying to build. And I think there's been a huge amount of investment from, I mean, if I just take the public cloud providers like AWS, Azure, GCP, 2024, I think each of them invested about 50 billion in AI infrastructure development. So really understanding the need for scale and capacity. And I think that's only doubled this year. And I think, you're probably circa around 80 to $100 billion this year in terms of investment from these organizations. So I think that these places provide the right playgrounds for you to be able to build the right things. It's really important that you've got access to that and you know how to use it. And again, part of being ready is going, do you have the capability that understands this technology, right? And how you provision, how you manage this type of infrastructure. I think, when we come to do that kind of assessment with our customers, there is a big focus around making sure that they understand what they need to do, how they need to do it, and if they haven't, where they can reach out to the right people for the support to help them.
I mean, setting up the infrastructure and services might be a future webinar because there's probably an hour of discussion in that. And then finally, Ian, any final thoughts on that question?
Yeah, look, I think the guys have done a great job of covering it off. I think, look, I have to agree, it's, we're not replacing a company's entire workforce. If anything, I see it as the opposite, as the guys have already said. I'd say treating AI as something separate is going to hinder the company, not accelerate it forwards. But as Henry and Paul have said, the real investment is going to be the upskilling, of the staff, the tooling, and really the adapting of the mindsets of the engineers as well to take them on that journey. And most of them take them on that journey themselves. So they're working in harmony with AI and not really against it. I think just from my perspective, from a data and AI point of view, yes, we are going to see specialty roles, but we see that already, right? It's, we already have teams of ML experts and data scientists. I don't foresee that changing. I think what I do see changing is just the current engineers need to understand how AI components will need to work, how it integrates within existing systems, as Paul was saying, how it behaves, what it can and can't do. So I think for me, this is more of an extension of their role as opposed to a new role. And again, I said it a couple of times before, what we're seeing more of is more cross-functional teams. Teams are working so much more closely together so that the AI systems are aligned across the business. It's not done in isolation. It's really, co-designed by the architects, by product, by engineering departments. And what I say is, AI systems are always evolving and improving, and that's evident in the progress that we've seen over the past few months with, new models being released on a almost weekly basis. So we really need to make sure that we're experimenting, looking at the feedback loops, taking it on board, and really getting out the best out of the systems and also our employers as well. So again, as the guys have said, definitely don't see this as a new workforce, but I would definitely say that it's going to be an even bigger investment in the existing one.
Okay, thank you. So we've got 10 minutes left, so we've got time for some questions. We had a couple submitted in advance, and one was, and it actually leads on really nicely from that discussion. One is, how do you get engineers out of their comfort zone in terms of trying new tooling? It's in a work environment, nobody likes to feel like they start off wrong. And actually, it's one of my favorite things about working in software engineering. If you ask 5 engineers a question in a room, you will get 5 very drastically different answers about how to go about it. So I guess, what's the thoughts in the room about how do you build a confidence in the tooling?
So look, I'd like to go first on this one if that's all right. And look, guys, jump in if you feel that there's any additional points. But I do think that there's a couple of things here. I think from a first point, there's a psychological point of view culturally from an organization where whether you know it or not, you almost want permission to be given to go off and do this stuff, right? And try it. And I think it's really important that from the outset that ensuring that you get people that are comfortable with using this stuff and actually going out and experimenting is there being like some kind of communication from the business that we want this to happen. We're okay with, experimenting. Failure's okay because I think that we learn our best lessons from failure, right? That's one thing that I've really learned throughout the years using the agile approach. It's one of the key things, key mantras that people talk about is it's okay to fail. And I think allowing, giving that kind of psychological nod culturally to the teams is really important. So I would urge any of you out there that are really trying to get your teams and the best out of them, make sure you're having that chat with them to make sure they know it's okay. And then I think outside of that, you know, a lot of engineers are quite competitive, right? And like, they they like a game, they like a challenge. And I think putting it out there and talking about trying out this new tooling, like do things that will incentivize them to use it, right? Run a hackathon, for example. It's something we've done a lot of with our clients and even internally with ourselves, right? Do things that make it fun, make it exciting for them, gamify the process, give them something that, if you achieve this, it unlocks this, whatever it might look like. And I think it's something that we do really well at Demon is we try and inject fun into everything that we do. And I know that's a very generic term, making it fun, but really, like I say, is trying to appeal to the engineers' natures, appealing to everyone's nature within the business. It's okay to experiment, have fun with doing it, and like I say, make sure there's something in there that turns it into a bit more of a team sport rather than it just being individuals having to do it themselves.
I mean, I'd heartily endorse the idea of a hackathon. We ran one with some of my clients that I admire enormously. But also, it's a good idea is when you're talking to vendors about different tooling, have them involved in some of the hackathons. So we did one where we trialed the tooling, and it was a competition. It was a hack where you took the idea and you could choose the way the route that you got there, and then at the end of there was a competition and a judgment about the best, most elegant solution for the job. So hugely successful and we all had a lot of fun. Cool. And then it's a slightly related point. We touched on it earlier about what's going to happen in software engineering. Again, particularly in organizations like Demon, where we're working with our clients and they're trusting with us to work with them to get to a solution that works for them. Henry, how would how would you advise clients start to engage with us in terms of software engineering and trialing some of these new tools?
Well, I mean, the question is what's going to happen in software engineering. I'm not a soothsayer, and I think Nostradamus gave up when it got to AI because it all gets very cloudy in the future. I think that the way that we are engaging in these tools is to, well, I mean, you can probably talk about this better than I can, but we have an AI first squad that's going to be looking at this about how we can really push the boundaries of it. In the business itself, we are engaging with our clients that are already using these tools. What's going to happen in the future? So the exec challenged me to write a strategy for software engineering that was like, what does it look like in 5 years' time, and how can we make sure that we're covering our clients' requirements when we get 5 years into the future. I think one of the things that when we discussed this and we worked at this and looked through it and went forward for it, is that there is still going to be a lot of human involvement. The whole thing about this is going to wipe out 70% of software engineering jobs, I don't think that's true. It's going to enable a lot of great advances in software engineering and great advances in product and opportunity for our clients. I think what we see in 5 years' time is there's a human that's thinking about what is the art of the possible, what can be done, helped by AI to be able to build that and grow that. And I think that's something that I think that's the next 5 years. The 5 years after that, I have no idea, honestly. I think it's going to be great, and I think there's going to be so much opportunity. We still need great people, but the pace of this stuff is phenomenal.
Yeah. And I think we've got time just for one more question, and I think I'd like to direct it towards Ian. I mean, what's your biggest misconception around AI adoption?
It's hard to pin it down to one. I could probably come up with 50. So let me give you two or three. I'll be quite pointed about it. I appreciate we're against time. So I think the first one, Henry just touched on it, and hopefully we've done a really good job on this webinar to dispel the myth around reducing headcount in businesses. AI isn't just about automating tasks to reduce that headcount. There's so much more to it. It's human decision making. It's personalizing experiences for customers. It's improving outcomes. It's enabling entirely new capabilities. As Henry's just said, who knows what's happening in the next 5 years. So I think there is a massive myth out there about this is tools to reduce headcount, and actually what we're seeing actually applying these tools is the headcount is just the same. In fact, what we're seeing is just increased efficiency. I think the second one just wanted to touch on was really data needs to be perfect to be able to use AI. It really doesn't. It doesn't need to be clean, structured, and centralized. We can start with imperfect data. As long as it's fit for use, we can start building and iterating on that process. So, I think if you're waiting for that, it's never going to happen. And I think just lastly, I'll touch on this last one. It's probably AI is too risky, too dangerous. It's so unknown. We just wait till later. Again, I think for me, the biggest risk is, the risk of falling behind. As long as we've got some boundaries around it, like we've discussed, making sure it's being used in a safe and responsible way, implemented with the right guardrails and governance, then, we're winning from the very start. And I think, again, I'm not going to go on with all of the misconceptions, but I think for us as a business to cut through all of those misconceptions, we've created our own readiness assessment that we're using with our clients. And I'd say, yes, there's hundreds out there that you can go away and use. So why is ours that different? So I think most of them that you'll see are probably theoretical. Ours are created in a way that is actionable straight away. It also integrates with your business as well. So it's not something separate from it. It's not, go away and do this scoring and, I need to change my business structure. This is, we look at ways how we can make sure you're ready for it. And if you're not ready for it, we can tell you the routes that you need to take. So yeah, we've got a great AI readiness assessment that we can offer up to all of our clients to use. You're on mute actually this time, Elaine.
Brilliant. So with 2 minutes to go, I think we don't have time for any others. I see that there is a question in from Mo. Thank you very much. I will get back to you on that. So apologies, we did just run out of time. I'm sorry I missed that. Thank you so much for those of you that have joined us today. I hope you found it informative. If anything that you've heard today has got you thinking about where your organisation stands, or if you have a use case or idea that you would like to trial, we'd encourage you to get in touch to take the AI readiness assessment. It's a very quick and structured way to get a sense of your current position across culture, data, tech leadership, and all the things that we've talked about, and to highlight where to focus next. A link will be shared in the chat for the AI readiness landing page, and we will follow up with each of you that has registered to send out the recording of the video and give you a chance to come back to us. If you do have any further questions, Mo, apologies again, ideas, or want to explore what getting started would look like, drop us a message, reply to the follow-up, or connect to any of us directly. We're all on LinkedIn, and we're always happy to have a conversation as well. If any of you had any connection issues throughout, please don't worry. Like I said, we'll be sending the recording out to everybody after, and we'll also be taking snippets of it to share on LinkedIn. And then just finally, on behalf of Paul, Henry, Ian, myself, and Damon, thank you so much. And we will hopefully speak again very soon. Thank you very much.
Thanks all.
Nice one. Thanks everyone.
Thanks, everybody.